I jumped off the amiibo train at the right time. I took Rosalina and Lucina and got out of there. But not before also getting Isabelle, Wii Fit Trainer, Sonic, Mario, Peach, Tom Nook, Blather, Zero Suit, Samus, Splatoon. One of my biggest regrets is I didn't jump on the whole Animal Crossing card thing. I mean, it was on my list, I just kept pushing it back. I'd love to get into it now, but I can't seem to find them anywhere. I go to Target and all they have is Lottie. Like, a lot of Lottie. eBay isn't helping much either. People are overcharging for these cards by a lot. I need my fix. So, different Animal Crossing cards, e-reader cards. This is the Nintendo e-reader. I briefly touched upon it a few weeks back when I talked about Mario Party E, but I wanted to double dip and do a whole video just on this thing. The e-reader is an accessory made for the Nintendo Game Boy Advance, released in 2001. It was compatible with every GBA system except for the original Nintendo DS, because it just didn't fit in this thing. The original e-reader is a card scanner which can scan dot codes on a variety of different cards. After its release in Japan, the console lived alongside the Game Boy Advance until it was discontinued in 2008, but its international lifespan was very short, only lasting from 2002 to 2004. This thing is a bit of a monster. I mean, there were so many different GBA models, I'm surprised they never made another model of this, and it just starts looking ridiculous on things like the Game Boy Micro. There were a variety of different games and skills that the e-reader was capable of. Some required connection to another game, and some just required cards and the device itself. Let's look at the latter first. When you think of the NES and convenience, here's the first thing that comes to mind. Dirty cartridges, consoles in the closet, whatever this is. Okay, I know it's a coaxial cable, calm down, older millennials. But the e-reader is a true innovator in inconvenient access. To play an NES game, you have to scan a barcode in the device. A barcode split amongst 9 lines and 5 cards. There were also single cards that just had a Game & Watch game on them, but who wants those? I mean, I kind of do, but not right now. The e-reader can be a bit picky when it comes to scanning.
Read error.
You have to be very slow and very consistent when scanning. Fortunately, after scanning it, you can save one game into the e-reader. So if you want to play Clu Clu Land, you're all good. But if you also want to play Donkey Kong Jr., you better bring all these cards with you. All 5 for every game. If you lose one of these cards, you lose access to the game, so it looks like every 10-year-old who had one of these things got to enjoy Clu Clu Land once before they just had a stack of 4 useless cards. Here's an interesting thing that I actually did a full video on. Mario Party E. This is a complete card and board game made exclusively for the e-reader. Think about it as a cross-section between Mario Party and Uno, with the mini games being stored on the e-reader cards. It's actually a pretty solid game, and I made a pretty solid video about it, so go check that out. But here's how I found out about the e-reader, or at least what made me want one. In 2003, the Pokemon card game's Neo expansion series came to the end, and Pokemon Expedition became the first in a new line of cards called the E-Series. The cards in the E-Series line featured 1 or 2 dot codes which could be scanned to reveal either a Pokédex entry, a minigame, or a secret attack. Yeah, kind of unfair if you don't have an e-reader. I'm actually trying to find out whether or not these special attacks that you could only access through their e-reader were allowed in competitive play, but I can't find a clear answer. The E-Series eventually became the EX series with the Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire expansion. And fun fact, EX Ruby and Sapphire was the first set to be produced stateside by Nintendo itself, as Wizards of the Coast lost its license. Most of these cards just contain Pokédex entries. The actual games Ruby and Sapphire actually had some e-reader support too. By plugging in a Game Boy Advance to another Game Boy Advance with the e-reader, you could scan trainer cards to fight special trainers. I think it's worth noting that the link cable at the top of the e-reader only worked and was needed for both the original Game Boy Advance and the Game Boy Advance player. The Game Boy Advance SP didn't have its link port blocked, and the Game Boy Advance Micro needed its own adapter to use the link cable. And the DS Lite, well, fuck the DS Lite. There's also a card that was distributed through Nintendo Power that allowed you to capture a Pokemon that's exclusive to the other version. Latias was available in Sapphire and Latios Ruby, but you could go and catch the other in a special location with the Eon ticket, which was given out in Nintendo Power issue 173. By the way, as a kid, I had this card and I had this issue, but do you think I know where it is? Well, yeah, it's actually right here. There were also cards made for Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire, Pokemon Channel, and Pokemon Coliseum, which required a connection cable to the GameCube, which is a lot more realistic than the whole extra Game Boy thing. But moving on to another e-reader compatible game, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, which is the official title of the game, not Super Mario Bros. 3 Advance. Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. This game actually did something very unique and added extra levels to a game that was over 20 years old. Some of these levels claim to be really easy, but my search for the GameCube's D-pad makes it impossible to play. Then there are levels that are like, hey, you know that one music block thing? What if it was the whole level? They got that oddly difficult Mario Maker imagination to them. The e-reader levels are actually stored onto the cards itself, so it's not like you can use an action replay to hack these levels back into the game. When Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 was ported to the Wii U, all these levels were added back in. But you just replaced one inconvenient thing with a totally other inconvenient mess of a console. And then Animal Crossing back at it again. Let's revisit my old town of tits and see how the villagers have been. God damn it, Vespa's still here. So to my knowledge, all the Animal Crossing cards do is allow you to get special items. Tom Nook doesn't even pay a lot for them. All the cards have a code on the back and you can enter the codes on the card and send them to a random villager. In return, the character on the card will send you an item. So technically you don't even need the e-reader for this one, which is a good thing. Speaking of inconvenient ways to play NES games, if you enter codes from the card, you can actually get NES consoles for your house in Animal Crossing. And you could play the game through Animal Crossing or temporarily put them on a Game Boy Advance until you turn the power off. But nonetheless, it's a cool thing to be able to store these games on the Game Boy Advance without a cartridge. The cool thing about the Animal Crossing cards are the cards themselves. They're full art with characters on the back, and they actually look pretty darn close to what they eventually did with the Amiibo cards. This is definitely something that I want to collect. Oh god, it's another thing I want to collect. This thing is inconvenient. If you don't have access to another Game Boy, there's hardly anything you can do with it. You can play some NES games in the least convenient way possible. If you want to shell out another $60 on top of the price of the e-reader, you can play Mario Party E, and then you can view some Pokédex entries. Wow. I think the console would have done a lot better had it worked somehow without the additional accessories. Part of the reason why I brought up the NES transferring from Animal Crossing is because this shows that the Game Boy Advance is capable of holding a small amount of data. If the e-reader could have transferred data to the Game Boy Advance's internal memory and allowed you to unplug the device and plug in another game, I think people would have been more likely to use it. But instead of this, you need a second Game Boy and the GameCube. I love the concept of cards being used for video games. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Drilled that idea into my head. In the end, the e-reader became a hunk of plastic to be sold at GameStop for $4.99, which is literally how I got mine back in the day. I hope Nintendo makes additional Amiibo cards and does a second printing of the ones that already exist, because I never got a chance to get them. But until then, I've opened the floodgates for another toxic collecting habit. Thanks for watching. If this is your first video of mine, be sure to subscribe. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, I have both an Instagram and a Twitter. I'm going to start doing live streams in the coming weeks, so if you want to stay up to date to find out when those are going to be sure to follow me there. I'm also trying to go to more conventions throughout the year, and usually I don't post those to the YouTube channel, so if you want to get a schedule on those kind of things, you also have to follow me there. Anyways, thank you for watching. Have a good day. I'll see you next week.